So you've just found out that you have an ancestral calling. Maybe you're reeling, maybe you're feeling all the feelings, maybe you just know that it's true, that it's always been there. And maybe you just want to know what you're supposed to do now. Let's talk about that. Hello and welcome to Sangoma Society. My name is Uhani Wagamakwapa Epasini. I am Honey Tell a Story on all social media platforms, and this is Sangoma Society, where we demystify the ancestral. And today I want to talk about what to do once you know that you have an ancestral calling. The first thing, almost the only thing that you need to do the moment or as soon as you find out that you have an ancestral calling is to sit with it. Sit with that truth. Sit with that reality. Feel where it lands in your body. This may have been a confirmation, or maybe the first time that you hear of it. Sit with what you've heard. Sit with what you've been told. Perhaps you found out through a dream. Perhaps a member of your family told you. Maybe a healer has told you. Most of us, the first time that we hear, the first time that we suspect, what we're seeking is confirmation first. Get your confirmation. Confirmation does not look like running from one person to another, or waiting 17 years for the dream that you think you should have, or someone in your family saying to you, yes, we know about this. Confirmation can be much simpler than that. Sometimes it's that dream that you want to ignore. Sometimes it's that vision or that experience or that episode. Sometimes it's another consultation with somebody saying to you that this is indeed the case for you. I didn't put confirmation as the first thing or the only thing that you should do, because I find so many people are running and not admitting to themselves that they're running. Going from one healer to the next, hoping that somebody will tell them a different story. That's why I'm going to bring it back to the first thing I said you should do. Probably the only thing that you need to do, which is sit with what you've heard. Sit with what you know now. Don't run into the future and begin building scenarios of what you think this means for you. Don't run into the past trying to figure out where it did or didn't come from. Just sit. Sit with it. What does it mean to sit with something? When you make space for the reality of what it is that you're experiencing in the moment that you find yourself in. Whatever your next step is going to be, it's going to define something. It's going to define the future that you will have. What you want is to make any decision that you make from a place of truth, being true to yourself. So just sit with it. Sitting with it can look like saying nothing, can look like asking nothing. Sitting with it can look like meditation. Sitting with it can look like prayer. Sitting with it can look like journaling. Now, I didn't say sitting with it can look like ukuphahla, because I find that's also a way that some people run. And it's by beginning to do things that are well beyond your pay grade, like well above what you have the capacity for. Just because you have a calling doesn't mean that you know what it is that you're doing. Let's start there. So just sit with the reality that you have this calling. If it makes you afraid, admit to yourself that you feel afraid. If it gives you anxiety, admit to yourself that it does this. If it's something that you don't want for yourself, admit that to yourself. If it's something that you do want for yourself, admit that for yourself. If you see it as an incredible opportunity, admit that for yourself. Do not run to begin performing what you think it is that having a calling is supposed to look like. I've seen people assume identities. If anything, that's one of the things I'm going to advise that you shouldn't do. I've seen this on social media across multiple platforms. People who have a calling, who have done nothing to answer that calling, beginning to assume identities and perform these identities because they believe that this is what it means to be spiritual. This is what it means to be answering their calling. But they haven't sat with it. The reality, the truth is that you have a calling. Doesn't mean that you have answered that calling. Doesn't mean that you are what that calling is calling you to become. There is still a call to be answered. And answering that calling, that is going to be easily one of the most difficult transitions that you will ever encounter or experience in your life. There is going to be a dying to the self that you could never have imagined. There is going to be a rebirth that is more than you could ever anticipate. There is going to be a duality of reality as it is seen in this world and reality as it is shown to you by those whom are calling you, that you will have to come into and adjust to, that you simply haven't done at this moment where you are right now. You've just found out. And it's okay. You don't need to be anything. You don't need to know anything at this moment. You just have to sit with it, acknowledge it, feel into it, be with it. Why am I emphasizing that you should just sit with it, that you should just be in it? Because the road ahead is one that is going to require that you are honest with yourself. You can't be honest with yourself if you haven't sat with this truth, with this reality, with this new discovery. If you haven't sat with this truth, with this discovery, if you haven't sat with this reality, you may make decisions out of fear. You may make decisions based off stories that you're telling yourself. You may make misinformed decisions because you are ultimately going to have to make decisions. Your ancestors come through you, but they do not act for you. You will be held accountable in this life and in the next for how you respond to this news today and what action you take beyond this discovery. You can't move forward with integrity if you haven't sat with something. This is one of those things that is going to require that you begin to discover the scope of your self-awareness and settle down into the reality, into the truth, and just be in it. That's the most powerful thing that you can do. The deepest shifts, the brightest discoveries, the deepest clarity is going to come from you simply sitting with the truth and reality of the news that you have received about your calling. I hope that today's video has helped to bring you some clarity about what you can do once you've discovered that you have an ancestral calling. If you have any questions about today's topic, I know that there's still so much scope to cover within this topic, and I definitely will do different videos around that. But you know what? If you have a suggestion for a video that you want me to cover regarding this topic of the ancestral calling, just drop it in the comments down below. My name is Uhani Wagamakwagwa. I am Honey Tell a Story on all social media platforms, and this is Sangoma Society. You can find Sangoma Society on all social media platforms, including Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, as well as sangomasociety.com. Please remember to like and subscribe. If there's somebody who you think could get some help from what we've discussed here today, share away. Until next time, Bukhari Makos.